Welcome to Revolution 3, part of the history of the future of Earth, his greatest story ever told, part 2. I won't go into the entire context of the Judgment Day that I have been discussing, but I will today and at this time, since we resonate at 3, discuss how we might achieve the new world order that I've imagineered of one enterprise, WeThePeopleOfEarth.biz, with its own global reserve bank owned by all the people of all the nations of Earth. And, well, 3, if you get back to the, let's just call it my discussions of all of the history of the next big things, the first being monopoly, second being travel, and third being democracy. Now, what's interesting about that is I imagine here that the future that we will achieve someday will be a democracy of us, not a direct democracy, but an enlightened direct democracy. And enlightened by what? Enlightened by, well, enlightened by a future technology platform that we'll create together to actually make our system work better, and also enlightened by capitalism, but enlightened capitalism. Capitalism, by the way, was number 5. 1, 3, and 5. Prime numbers of very great import in the symbology of this thing, because in this symbology, this concept of democratic capitalism, I've also called it guerrilla capitalism, we have trickle-up, trickle-down economics. But I will talk about the context of how we might achieve such a new structure and how we might move from where we are. And today I'm going to discuss, today is Armistice Day, by the way, 2012. Actually, Veterans Day. Actually, yesterday was officially the day, Sunday. They have a holiday today in America. They call it Veterans Day. It's also from Armistice Day, which basically, just to set the record straight, the entire plan that I have requires an Armistice Day for the world. It requires sort of a NATO for the world, in which the United States and Russia and China and Europe all participate to the extent that we need military, participate in a global disarming, in a movement from lethal weapons to non-lethal weapons, to the extent we would even need weapons to maintain security in a peaceful, prosperous Earth. But let's discuss how we could, move from where we are. From where we are in China today, or from where we are in Russia today, to where we might be if they had imagined this thing that we have the capability of doing, that if we used technology properly, we could do. So, first thing is you have to imagine the concept of one thing. Concept of electronic money and of virtual equity. Now, virtual equity means it's not much different than the kind because nobody really has the actual shares of stock. But it's like if you have an enterprise, you have equity in that enterprise, and that equity would produce dividends. But virtual means it's just in a computer, we know you own your piece, and it produces the dividends. But the other thing is we may choose, and for good reason, we may choose to control whether you sell that. Why would we choose to control selling that equity? Because what we want to do is give the people that we might endow such equity to. See, this isn't like just taking your equity. It's like endowing you and then giving you the constraint that you can't sell your equity because, the best investment in the future of the planet is an investment in the future of the planet. See, this is an investment, whatever nation you might take it from a perspective of, in the ground floor of the future of Earth, one almost guaranteed by our own global bank to produce great returns for us, at least for the people now. Maybe in 1,000,000 years, those people will be running out of money. But if we get that far, even 1,000 years, actually, even if we got to 100 years, well, it's probably worth it. We declare bankruptcy, start printing money again, just like teasing. Okay, anyway, here's the thing. Once you, so let's say you're Russia. Okay, so Russia decided to go and went capitalist. And well, they went wild, wild west capitalist, sort of American cowboy style capitalist. And well, because of that, well, there was a lot of guys that got billions just because they were at the right place, the right time. And well, some of those billionaires maybe have been right, maybe been wrong, and Putin's trying to go back and take some of the billions back. Well, let's just collect them in, pay them off, and then bring back the rightful capital, and then basically imagine this, take the enterprise, and rather than have the government own the enterprise of Russia, the government is part of a bigger enterprise, but then the government turns it over into stock to the people, and the people get dividends. And well, the ultimate idea is we're going to grow the Russian enterprise and expand its resources for the world to the extent that we can use its resources, etc., and build a new infrastructure for the people. And because the people now have income from their dividends, they can then pay for more housing, well, and have a bank which will help contribute to the building of housing, both in Russia and worldwide. So then take the same model, apply it to China. See, well, the Chinese people, see, it's this thing, because here's the problem. That's the problem of communism. See, communism formed democratic, and they really couldn't be, and well, it's not necessarily that you need to spread everything equally, but we need to have a safety net. China's a perfect example. If I had 1.5 billion people running around and half of them starving for their lives, I'd be very nervous about them, running and saying, I need to have rice. Well, of course they have rice, and that's part of the security thing. But see, if we focus our Earth's efforts on housing and feeding people, and well, building schools, but recognizing also that, well, building schools will grant greater education, but over time, just because somebody has an education, in the future of us, technology is going to change things so that it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody will have the job that they imagine from that education, that it'll be, well, what if the benefits of society of various jobs, well, we do it based on monetary standards. They're not necessarily wrong, but what we need to do is focus on how we advance innovations and how we bring them out and how we bring in people more fairly. And see, this is part of it, because once you do it, by the way, the only way this works is, so we've imagined the virtual equity and the virtual currency. So to the extent that the leaders lead, well, their bank accounts would be known. And see, we need to move to an area where we have transparency that allows us to say, yes, okay, people are getting wealthy, that's okay, they're within the constraints, not the constraints, but they're within the system, they're not getting illegally wealthy. Now, that comes to another part of it. When you start to think about the global world, you start to think about, I don't want to just own the white markets, you must own the grey markets, the black markets. And well, maybe you could turn the black markets grey or something, but you need to take the world's enterprise into perspective and well, understand what the economic issues of Afghanistan, well, and then again, this corruption thing, but the corruption is because of the greed over these pieces of paper. But if that we could get rid of that, first thing you got to get rid of corruption doesn't pay, because we're going to track it and find it. But the second thing is you get rid of the sources of the greed, and well, you build a better world, and well, you could do it from this bank. Now, the point is really, I described in the context of China or Russia, any communist nation moving towards this new earth. In an American model, we would have to look towards charities and benevolent wealthy people to help fund those people, and to look towards the government capital we've created and the assets we've created and the untaxed capital gains, the untaxed gains throughout, and then look to those creating this cushion. But here's the thing, I figured, hey, if you buy everybody out and offer them 1.5 times what everything is worth. See, that's right. That was my plan in 2005. It would be my plan today. It would be my plan in 2008 or 2009. It would be my plan any time for you. We'll buy everything out, everything on earth, the mines, the enterprises. I'll pay for the Amazon. You can't even capitalize the Amazon and buy the Amazon. We'll put it in the trust of our bank, and our bank will own the world, and our bank will be tied to a global enterprise, and our global enterprise would be, well, tied to one objective, the advancement of prosperity of all people, and that would be done within a moral context that we agree to, a moral context of truth. And by the way, we would use technology, and I've described to you before, it could be different technology, but it's basically the idea of iPhones, where we could, well, travel anywhere in your eyes, anywhere you might imagine in 3D, with sound, with cameras over, if you wanted to bring your own present domain and put it into this sort of more public domain I've described beyond Google Earth. Well, see, when you start to think about yourselves moving towards this sort of movie, which our world will move to, in which your life will be part of a reality movie, it puts a whole different context in terms of Judgment Day, in terms of how you will be judged. Your own actions are your own judgments. And well, anyway, the thing is, we then have to go and say, okay, if we have the technologies to build this better world, to build heaven and earth, where do we get the software code to, well, what software could we? We're actually talking about a global human enterprise connected in a different fashion with different banking. Okay, so imagine the world as you not know it today. Okay, imagine a world in which, well, Apple was a Trojan horse. Apple was allowed to buy the world. And, well, okay, and Steve Jobs is, well, he's like running it from behind the scenes, obviously. And okay, so imagine, even if you had iPhones, not even that's iPhones, but imagine that every time you spend money, it was the virtual currency. And well, a little Apple bank, well, with the big monetary system of the world, because it would own all the golden resources and, well, be building out these computer iPhones for people, and their money, we just take a cut out of the transaction, and well, we'd buy out Verizon and the rest of the global networks as one Apple could own the world. Well, I last long time ago said who took a bite out of Steve Jobs' Apple. If you really felt you followed the model, you would build an entirely vertical enterprise between WeThePeopleOfEarth.biz and every human on Earth, and connect them to the iPhone, and you could actually create a virtual nation outside of the domain of your nations. You can certainly move the internet if you should so choose. Again, all of this is against your current antitrust laws. You would all be all over Apple. But if Apple was the people's Apple, well, if Apple was the people's Apple and the people owned our own trust, and, well, it was engineered for the profits of the people. That's why I became the prophet of prophets and the prophet of prophets. But actually, all these things that I've described, you could actually go back into, well, you can almost back into like go back into your Bibles, go back into, well, Judaic law and Islamic law, and go back into, well, how they organize society. And it's no different. We can find models We just need to recreate them into the secular concept of truth today, which must take into account the entire history of the future of us. Thank you very much. We'll see you next episode.